Beginning with Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film Psycho, slasher films have captivated audiences for decades. Psycho set in place a formula for slasher films that is still widely popular today. American film professor Carol J. Clover identifies 6 key elements in this formula. You might recognize some: a killer, multiple female victims, a penetrating weapon, a final girl, a terrible place, and finally, shock. Tonight, we will be examining 3 of these 6 key elements: a final girl, penetrating weapons, and a terrible place. Throughout this process, we will also be examining the representation of women in horror. If slasher films focus so heavily on the brutalization of women, why are women some of the genre's biggest fans? Well, I've invited a few friends of mine to see if we can find an answer to this question and many more. What do women like about horror? What do women not like about horror?
I do like horror films because I like being able to kind of create my own anxiety, I guess.
I don't like horror films. I honestly, they scare me too much. I get too many nightmares to like horror films.
I think that women are huge fans of horror films because we like being able to control what we're scared about, when we're scared. Most of the time in our day-to-day lives, we can't control when something is scaring us, but when we watch a horror film, we are choosing to be scared. We can expect that something scary will happen, but we also know that the movie isn't real, and I think that's why women enjoy horror films.
Girl looks death in the face, and death often looks right back. You may know her as Laurie Strode from John Carpenter's 1978 film Halloween, or as Nancy Thompson from Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street. In slasher films such as these, the final girl typically only has 2 options: survive long enough to be rescued by a third party, or kill the killer herself.
My favorite slasher film is Halloween. I like Halloween because I watched it a lot when I was younger. And I still like to watch it now, and I like how different it is with Michael Myers, kind of like the main character. He uses his knife, but he also chases his victims, and he just seems like he's walking, but every time they turn around, he's always right there, even though he's never really chasing after them. And I kind of like that part of Halloween.
Overall, I feel like women aren't represented enough in horror films because they stick to 1 or 2 stereotypes, and they don't expand on what women can actually do. So I feel as though underrepresented, honestly.
I don't like the way women are represented in horror films because women generally are depicted as making ridiculous decisions, not using common sense. I think they make decisions in horror films that a woman would never generally make. I also think that women are over-sexualized in horror films, and I think they're just not realistically depicted in them.
I don't particularly like horror films. I feel like they are too easy to predict, and a lot of them go for the easy cop-out characters, like the virgin, who that's the only character that survives, or the sarcastic, funny one, or the jock.
But what is it about the final girl that makes her so different from her less fortunate peers? Why is she the one chosen to survive? Well, Carol J. Clover suggests this may be due to the final girl's more masculine personality and innocent demeanor. While her friends are out partying and having sex, the final girl is babysitting and studying for her upcoming exams. But who does the audience relate to more, the final girl or her less fortunate peers?
I do relate to Laurie from Halloween because in the first Halloween movie she is a babysitter. She does well in school and she's always trying to listen and do what she's expected to do. And I'm kind of the same way, so I guess I relate to her the most.
I think I would be like the ditzy, like kind of really bubbly character in the horror films that usually like die very beginning of the movies. I think I relate the most to that character.
Like there was another film I recently just watched since it's spooky season, but the two main woman characters were just, they had like those classic camp counselor outfits, but they like cut it so that it was like all boobs, and so the entire time she was just like, I have to have sex with this guy, but that was what's keeping her alive, her virginity, and it was just doesn't make sense. Why virgin?
One act that ensures the final girl's survival is her instinct to fight back. Often, she even utilizes the weapons the killer has attempted to utilize on her. These weapons are almost always phallic, penetrating weapons. According to Clover, when the final girl takes the weapon away from her attacker, she's often taking away his masculinity and dominating him. These weapons can include knives, chainsaws, machetes, or even sewing needles.
I think that people who like horror films are more into like the gory, super scary type things. Like I said, that's not for me.
I don't have a favorite horror movie weapon, but my favorite horror movie is Halloween, and Michael Myers uses a knife, but I'm not like, whoa, there's a knife.
I don't think anyone uses a gun in horror films because it would be harder to progress the plot. The writers would have to work more to include that with that, like give actual reasons as to why they wouldn't just be shot dead instantly.
So why does the killer choose a weapon, such as a knife, over an easier killing tool, such as a gun? Wouldn't the killer claim more victims if he chose an easier killing tool? Well, maybe he's not trying to kill as many people as he can. Maybe the killer is looking for an intimate, personal connection with his victims.
I think no one ever uses a gun in a horror film because if you use a gun, it's immediate, and that's not something that a viewer is going to be drawn into. Whenever it's like a knife or a chainsaw, it's usually more gory, it's drawn out, the victim feels a lot more pain.
I think no one uses a gun because it would stop the plot of the movie. Because they could just shoot everyone. Like, whether it's the killer that has the gun, they would just die. Or if it was the victims that have the gun, they could just shoot him and then it would be done with. So I don't think it would make the movie progress at all.
I would also say that guns aren't really used in horror films because the American people, we are so desensitized to guns being used every day, and it's something that we can encounter almost any day, so I don't think it would be used in horror films to get a reaction out of the audience.
Finally, we have reached the terrible place. This is where the climax happens. A terrible place can be anywhere. It can be a strange hotel, the woods, or even your very dreams. The final girl exists here for hours on end. While her friends were murdered quickly, the final girl runs, trips, gets back up, and runs again. Her attacker is both far away and right behind her at the same time. Now, the final girl has two options: survive long enough to be saved by someone else, or kill the killer herself.
Yes, I have been afraid to be alone after watching horror films.
No, I haven't really been scared to be alone after seeing a horror film. I think it's mostly because of how predictable they are. Like that last one I saw was Sinister. I predicted the entire film within the first 5 minutes, and all my friends got mad at me, but it was following that formula, it was too easy.
Yeah, most definitely. I've definitely been more cautious, like walking home or back to my car at night based on horror films, just like being alone and in the dark at night. Like, I feel like watching horror films has definitely elevated my concern for my well-being. Most definitely, yeah.
Horror films do make me more cautious. They do raise my anxiety, which is one of the reasons I do like them, because something about the anxiety, it can also be excitement when you're watching them. But I'm also cautious when I'm watching them, especially if I'm alone, because it makes you think maybe someone could be outside of your house too.
I guess I get really paranoid after I watch a movie. Like, I will get so many nightmares, like, throughout, like, the rest of the week. I'll be gone.
I haven't been afraid of a specific place because of a horror film, but I have been afraid to be alone in specific places, like at night, just because of true, like, real life experiences that have actually happened in those places or at night.
Before that class that I had to take watching horror films, I'd watched one horror film ever. That was The Exorcist. And I was so scared to even be in my bed, because most of the time the girl who's possessed is just in her bed, and I was like, I don't want anything to happen to me. so I didn't want to get in my bed. I honestly don't think I've could survive a horror film because I'm definitely the one to like go down the wrong hallway or not be fast enough and get caught by the bad guy. So I don't think I could survive in a horror film.
I mean, I'm not fit. If you want to put that aside, then maybe. Because I don't think I would ever do the stupid things that they do. I'd probably run away with, like, find an actual weapon instead of pass by them. Possibly.
I don't think that I could survive a horror film because I am a woman, and most of the time in horror films they make decisions that aren't that smart. I would probably end up dying. Also, I think based on my physical appearance, I wouldn't survive a horror film.
I forgot to mention that there's one other more permanent option for our protagonist. The third option is death, and sadly, this is more realistic for us in the real world. The final girl is an unrealistic representation of women. She is both beautiful yet average, intelligent yet ditzy. She truly is not like other girls, and though we'd like to believe we're all like Laurie Strode, we're all like Judith Myers. Just existing as normal human beings destines us for death. Even me. Even you.